What's up, guys? Today we're going to go over the Oathkeeper change. This one was one I was definitely looking forward to because I'm a huge fan of bows in Leviathan's Breath, and looking at what the change is, along with the fact that bow charges can be held indefinitely, gain a bonus to the bow's damage when released based on how long the charge was held, provides a moderate benefit to the airborne effectiveness of bows. So in this video, we're going to be going over first how this works and testing it with all the exotic bows in the game. And overall, I am super excited for this change because Leviathan's Breath has become my go-to exotic, and I like bows and hard content. So jumping straight in. So as you hold down the bow, now as you see, along with the ability to hold it forever, you'll get a buff with 4 bars, and that will last for roughly 5 seconds, then it will go away. So I'll get a damage increase of this buff. First, without it, we hit this 14k number. With 1 bar, it goes up to 20. With 2, up to 26. Then I skip 3 on accident and go to 4, which was 37. 4 again at 37. And I finally do a 3 bar one at 31.5. So damage of 1 bar is 1.38. With 2, 1.75. With 3, 2.13. And then finally with the full charge of times 4. 2.5x, which is a lot of damage. And at this point, I was super excited for the Leviathan's Breath. So looking at how that works with this, go ahead and shoot a normal bow with no charges, 53 and 72. Now if we go and get the max buff, the times 4, as you see, it does absolutely nothing. The exact same numbers, which is pretty unfortunate. I was super excited to see how this combo would work, and just showing off why this is pretty silly. If we look at the rate of fire of 5 arrows without using the exotic, then with using the full times 4 charge. Now these clips will not be with Archer's Tempo, but just for comparison purposes, 1-to-1. As you see, you're going to have to hold the bow obviously a lot longer per arrow, which means this is not going to be a great DPS increase, if a DPS increase at all, given the fact of how much longer it takes to fire each arrow now. So just looking at what the DPS increase would have even been if they did make it 2.5x, as you see, it would have only been a 24% DPS increase with the full 2.5x, which would have been a pretty decent trade-off. But at the same time, I do think the 2.5x would have been a little bit too much for this bow. I think it should have been a net decrease in DPS, while still giving you more total damage output and higher damage per arrow. And the extra total damage output would have been handy in like solo dungeon challenges, you know, solo flawless dungeon. And the extra damage per shot would have been really good for under-like gameplay versus champions, for example, GMs. So I'm not sure why they were scared of making it work with Leviathan's Breath. I do agree it shouldn't have been the 2.5x, but as you'll see with the other exotics I'm going to show off here in a second, I think there was a pretty obvious solution to make it work without making it too OP. So moving on to those, first with the Trinity Ghoul, there's going to be a common theme you'll quickly realize with the exotics. As you see, the Lightning Rod hits for this like 10k number. Now if I get the full times 4, it does not change at all. So the Oathkeeper did not increase the damage of Lightning Rod, but it will increase the damage of just the bow by that 2.5x with the full 4 bars. Moving on to Le Monarch, which should work with its poison arrows. And one thing that's cool about Oathkeeper with all of these bows, a lot of them revolve around a perfectly drawn arrow. And with Oathkeeper, as long as you keep holding it, it will always be the perfect draw. And you can release it whenever you want and still get the effects, which will make it a lot easier to land and spread that poison with this bow. And look at damage on Carl. Normally it will hit for the arrow, this 9.8k number, and the poison will be 976. And with Oathkeeper, the arrow itself will go up by the 2.5x while the poison stays the same. So the same theme, the arrow itself will get the buff while any explosion or effect will not. So look at Tiku's Divination with its Sacred Flame and the Causality arrows, where we first need to hip fire, then do the precision hit while ADS. Look at that. The Oathkeeper will increase both the hip fire and the direct impact of the ADS arrow. So it's not bad, but a decent chunk of this bow is the explosion, which will not be increased with Oathkeeper. And the final energy bow will be the Hierarchy of Needs. This will be pretty similar to that of the Tiku's, where once again, like all of the previous bows, the arrow itself will get the 2.5x, while the tracking explosive arrows will not, and they will stay the exact same at this 9k number. And now moving on to the kinetic exotic bows with the Wish Ender, because it's just a bow with no real effects. But the piercing arrows, the 2 white numbers you see, do not go up while the initial impact does. So once again, that is pretty weird. Only works with the actual bow on Wish Ender. And finally with the stasis one, as you might expect at this point, and are probably predicting, it works with the bow, but obviously does nothing for the actual stasis crystals in any way. So out of all the exotics we've shown off in this video, outside of the Leviathan's Breath, they all work with just the bow part and not the explosion or effect, which leads me to say really the best one to use this with will be Luminarch, because most of its damage is just a bow, right? It's basically just a legendary bow with a poison like Dragonfly effect. And given the fact that it has built-in overload, it's going to be really good for champion gameplay, GMs, and solo lost sectors. And overall, using a bow in hard content with the Oathkeeper now feels really good. So usually, let's say it takes like 2 or 3 bows to kill a red bar in a GM with a bow, but now you can hold it down and make it so you can one-hit them. And whenever a major comes by, let's say even when you're playing on light, being able to hold it longer and one-hit them just feels really satisfying. So I do think there is a place for this exotic in hard content, but I'm just really disappointed in the fact that it doesn't work at all with Leviathan's Breath. Given the way it works with all of the other exotics we've shown off, I don't see why it wouldn't just work with the initial impact of Leviathan's Breath, but not the explosion. And if they did that, it would kind of be that sweet spot where I was talking about, where it would be a net decrease in DPS, but a net positive for total damage output, and give it a little bit more damage to one-hit champions. So just for fun, I went ahead and ran the numbers of it just increasing the impact of the arrow and not the explosion. The DPS would have been a 21% decrease in DPS, while the total damage output would have been increased by 59%. So I think that would have made it a pretty good and worthwhile exotic. You lose out on DPS, but you gain total damage. And I'm not sure why they were so scared to make a bow exotic actually worth using. Like, this has almost never been worthwhile at all in almost 6 years since it's been out, and they finally had an opportunity to make it a real, like, kind of, not necessarily like oppressive meta exotic, but like one definitely worth using. It would have been a net negative DPS, so it necessarily wouldn't have been meta for like team-based raid boss fights or things like that, but it would have been like a pretty cool option for solo dungeons. It would have been a really good option for solo lost sectors, GMs. So I don't know really what they were thinking here. I hope that is a bug and they fix it. It's probably not. I think it's definitely intentional. But yeah, if you can't tell, I'm definitely disappointed. I was looking forward to seeing how this would work. And yeah, let me know what you think about it down below. There might be a little bit of gameplay left. Like usual, thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.